The last time the Giants had the 13th overall selection, they took Patrick Bailey in the draft. The last time they took a player out of Florida State, it was Buster Posey. And so James Tibbs III is both of those things, and they took him just the other day with their 13th overall pick in the draft. Is he the next star for the Giants?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I've been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're watching the show, or following the show, I should say. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And coming up on today's show, James Tibbs III is the Giants' selection at number 13 overall in this year's draft. The Giants did not have a second-round pick. They did not have a third-round pick, and that was because they signed for the first time under the Farhan Zaidi era. In the Farhan Zaidi era, they signed a couple of qualifying offer free agents, which meant that the loss of draft picks and the loss of international bonus pool money, but that doesn't really apply here. But they did get their first round pick, and it was number 13 overall, and they take Tibbs. And amateur scouting director Michael Holmes said of the lefty outfielder, "We really believe in his bat, his ability to hit, and his ability to hit with power. The left-handed aspect of him being able to drive the ball to all fields and really kind of be a middle-of-the-order type who we think will be in our lineup in the near future. He's a guy that we're really excited that we had an opportunity to draft, and a guy that we've been scouting quite a bit for some time." And said Tibbs, who had approximately 100 people, including many former coaches, gathered at his home on Sunday night, said this of when he heard his name called by the Giants. He said it was surreal. Your whole life you work for something. To be able to continue that at the next level is something that you always dream of. And he's Florida State's highest draft selection since the Giants took Posey 5th overall in 2008. And so it's not just that he's the Giants. I don't know if he's the last Florida State player the Giants drafted. I said that, but I'm actually not positive. But the highest selection for a Florida State player since the Giants took Posey in 2008, and that worked out pretty well. I'm not saying Tibbs is Posey. They're very different. One's a left-handed outfielder. One was taken number 13. One is was a catcher who's going to go to the Hall of Fame and 5th overall. But Tibbs also said when Posey got his number retired at Florida State last year, he came and talked to us. Just being able to learn from him and hear from him and see how he approached the game was something that was super inspiring to me. I can't wait to learn more if I ever get that opportunity. And he probably will get that opportunity, I would sure imagine. And so there's a lot more on Tibbs. He said that I'm someone that's going to be consistent, do the same thing every day. I'll take walks. I'm looking to drive the baseball to all parts of the field, play great defense, and be able to continue to improve on all of those things. I'm somebody that's hungry and willing to work and wants to be a part of championship baseball. And so, yeah, one thing he does is just kind of dominate the strike zone, which is clearly something that this front office focuses on, like taking balls and swinging at strikes and swinging hard at strikes and doing damage on pitches that he can drive. So he's a self-proclaimed, quote, complete feel guy, and talked about making adjustments to his mechanics. And he said, I was making sure I was getting back to the simplicity of my swing and what works for me, making sure I was getting back, my hands back and loading in the right direction and staying in my legs. Those two things, when they work well, they really work well. When they don't, then it's hard. And the scouting report, well, first of all, he said one last thing. He hit really well with a wood bat in the Cape Cod League. And he said, my whole thought process last summer was go out there, just play, figure out what works for me, and hopefully walk away with a better idea of how I approach the game. I was able to do that. I felt like I did it well. I actually thought, so this part, being okay with taking a strike was one thing that I worked really hard on this year. If we're not looking for it, we're going to take it. We're going to move on to the next one. Just be patient, understanding more of what I'm looking forward to and being really locked in on that and allowing my game to play through that. So the overall scouting report, just to give like a less biased, because this is coming from the Giants, it's coming from the player himself. Fangraphs in their post-draft, post-first round, post-day one, I should say, analysis had this to say about the pick of Tibbs the third, again, a lefty outfielder with the 13th overall pick. They said James Tibbs III is a rock-solid pick for the Giants, who get one of the more well-rounded college hitters in the class, a guy likely to be a good platoon outfielder at the very least. Tibbs and college teammate Cam Smith get to be about 7 miles away from one another during spring training. So, that's just kind of the quick write-up. And MLB Network, or MLB.com, had its own write-up on Tibbs, and we will have that for you as soon as I am able to pull it up. And here it is. James Tibbs, after an all-state career at Pope High School in Georgia, he headed to Florida State for college ball. He's done nothing but hit there. Combined 1066 OPS in 2 seasons, hitting 17 homers, 682 slugging as a sophomore. Put himself even more on the draft map by continuing to rake with a wood bat in the Cape Cod League over the summer, and then vaulted into first-round landscape with a huge junior campaign. It'll be his bat that gets him drafted in the first few rounds. Left-handed hitter is confident and smart at the plate, an approach he's improved over time at Florida State, cutting his strikeout rate, upping his walk rate considerably, and even more so this year than from freshman to sophomore year. He punished his fastballs and has been showing the ability to get to his average power and drive the ball to all fields, though he struggled more with breaking stuff in the past. He's likely limited to left field because he's a below-average runner, and some wonder if he might have a possible home at first base, a spot he saw considerable time at with the Seminoles a year ago. There might be more floor than ceiling here, but there's enough bat to think he could be the first Florida State hitter to go in the top 2 rounds since the Reds took catcher Matt Nelson, number 35 overall in 2021. So this is obviously an older report because everybody expected Tibbs to go not just in the first 1 or 2 rounds, but in the top half of the first round, pretty much. And so the Giants get him here. I watched him swing. I watched highlights. I don't watch a lot of college baseball, but I really like his swing. And they add a nice bat to the system here, and one who Michael Holmes said it, and then others have said it. He's someone likely to move quickly through the system, and Holmes said he should be in our lineup in the near future. So that's nice. You never want to wait like 7 years before a guy kind of shows up at the major league level. We're talking a shorter time frame for Tibbs because the bat is that advanced. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, what did the Giants do after they had to sit around and wait till their 4th round pick and beyond. So we'll get into what they did after that, and could they have gotten the steal of the draft with their 4th round pick? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. I love sports, as you know. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And as the All-Star break is here, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. Right now, I'm looking at a popular same game parlay bet for the All-Star game. It's Juan Soto to record a hit, Steven Kwan to record a hit, Jose Ramirez to record a hit, and the American League to win. I do think the American League lineup is significantly better this year. And a $10 wager wins $113.06 on that parlay. So that's just one example. And yeah, the money line is pretty close. I mean, it's obviously a good matchup. The over-under set at 7.5, and the spread plus 1.5 for the American League. So I guess the National League is actually the favorite here. National League is the favorite. And so unless I'm tripping, I never know how to read these odds properly. And then you can vote on the MVP. And so just something to check out. FanDuel.com right now, and make the most out of your summer. Make the most out of this All-Star break. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. This episode is also brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, myself included. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks, meaning you can turn $10 into $1,000. And Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And I've been playing a lot this season, and it's just been a ton of fun. And they've got deals like promotions from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays. I haven't actually looked. I'm assuming they have that for the All-Star game today, so that's something I'm going to check out for sure. And I've taken advantage of that and been successful with that, lowering the more or less number for the projections. And it's a big thing to help me find success. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, we are going to get into the rest of what's going on with the Giants draft so far, as it's continuing to go on here. And later on, we're going to get into how their drafting and developing is finally starting to starting to bear some fruit, especially, there's been a lot of criticism, there was, for the drafting of this new regime, but I think we're finally starting to see some of that success, even when certain players were very much doubted when they were taken. And so we'll get into that later on as well. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, we're going to be talking All-Star game, and then also, we've got mailbag questions left over, and we're going to be, looking at the first half of the season for the Giants and then getting you set for the second half. So a lot left to come this week on Locked On Giants, where it's your team every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, the second selection for the Giants didn't come until 116th overall. So they picked 13th, and then they didn't get another pick for 103 more picks at 116th overall. And yet the Giants nabbed the player MLB.com deemed the number 34 overall prospect in this draft at 116th overall. And I saw lots of kind of tweets from people who make a living out of kind of covering the draft, or at least it's a big hobby for them, saying that this player, Dakota Hudson, another outfielder from Mississippi State, was the best player entering day 2 of the draft. And the Giants are the team that got him. And so, yeah, I mean, MLB.com's rankings had him as the top ranked prospect entering day 2. And then he finally went to San Francisco in the 4th round. They say a former 3-star wide receiver recruit, he could be a power speed threat in the Giants system and is still growing on the diamond. His swing and miss rates will need to improve with more experience. However, and that may have caused his fall. Jordan is just San Francisco's second pick in 2024 after it took Florida State outfielder James Tibbs III 13th overall. And so, yeah, I mean, he was like I said, the 34th ranked prospect by MLB.com coming into the draft. They said one of the best prep athletes, high school athletes in the 2022 draft. Jordan went unselected because he planned on playing baseball and football at Mississippi State. The 3-star wide receiver recruit wound up giving up the gridiron and handled the rugged Southeastern Conference well, hitting .336 and bashing 30 homers in 2 seasons. He has improved faster than scouts expected and could factor into the first round this July as a sophomore eligible. Jordan may have more bat speed than anyone in the 2024 draft, and his lightning fast right-handed swing and strength produce huge exit velocities and at least plus power to all fields. He made strides with his pitch recognition and plate discipline as a freshman, inspiring confidence that his pop will translate at higher levels. He still needs to prove he can make consistent contact because he swings through fastballs and chases breaking balls, weaknesses that contributed to a 29% strikeout rate this spring. While Jordan has at least plus speed and may have plus straight line quickness, he's still learning how to make the most of it. He's not aggressive on the bases and is shaky in the outfield, where he spent most of his freshman year in left. His arm has gotten a little stronger since high school and now grades as average. So, it's not the profile of a number 1 overall pick, but to get this guy in the 4th round when, they're calling him a first round type player in this write-up. Obviously there are other, write-ups we could look at. MLB draft rankings update on Fangraphs. They had pre-draft rankings as well. They had Tibbs III as the 15th overall prospect, and Dakota Jordan out of Mississippi State as, let's see if I can find him really quick, Dakota. So he doesn't show up on their top 50, but he does show up as number 80. And again, the Giants got him 116th. And so that's pretty good value if you look at, where a lot of these other players went. And yeah, I mean, I watched highlights of Dakota Jordan and really like the swing. There is just a lot of bat speed there and just huge power. And so, I don't know, you just never know with draft picks, and the Giants have continued to draft. I know there's so many picks made. There's a write-up here about their 13th pick, 358th overall, that he was the number 151 prospect, and they get him again, 358th overall. And the write-up is that this is Xander Darby, a first baseman, third baseman from UC Santa Barbara. And the write-up is that he's a solid performance in the Cape Cod League last summer, helped solidify his place on the radar. He took some steps back with chase and whiff rates in 2024, causing his drop to this spot. He has raw power that shows up in batting practice, and San Francisco will aim to get that to translate into games, especially if he needs to stick to first base as he did this past season with the Gauchos. And so anyway, I guess that was just like a notable player selected in the later rounds, the what was it, the 13th round. So these are the standouts. I can't remember what round I said that he was picked, and I can't find it either, but I think I said 13th round. Yeah. No. Their 13th pick, which was okay, they're on this list again. Anyway, the Giants draft a bunch of guys, as does every team. I don't know anything about these guys really until we start reading about them. That's just my lack of knowledge about the amateur level of baseball, and I kind of have to learn on the fly, and I get to know them when they enter pro ball, and I start seeing kind of the numbers in a familiar place, in a familiar way, in speaking my language in terms of the numbers themselves. So, but that's the thing, is you just never know who's really going to work out and who's not. And a lot of times there are guys who are like can't miss prospects who end up failing. Like I think of Jared Kelnick, for example. Like he was thought to be such a great prospect coming up with the Mariners, and then he just has not been that. And that was even, he's like right on the cusp of the majors, and he was viewed that way. And so it's just really hard to predict how players will perform. And so just to react strongly to any player taken in the draft, I think is kind of a fool's errand. And, you kind of wait, you see the minor league performance, but also got to see them at the major league level and see them over a prolonged period of time at the major league level before you can really make an evaluation. And even guys at the major league level go on to change and become dramatically better. I mean, think about, Elliot Ramos, for example. A lot of struggles at the major league level, and then boom, he's had a breakout season and he's at the All-Star game. But he was a first-round pick, but that was way back in 2017 when he was 17. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, I do want to get into how the farm system and specifically some of the picks under this front office are starting to bear fruit despite, a lot of criticism along the way. The likes of Patrick Bailey wasn't a very popular selection. How's it look now? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, this episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities, and the Giants head to 2 National League West cities to open up the second half. They're in Colorado, which is a beautiful city to start the second half. Great place to visit, great ballpark. And then they do, in fact, go to Los Angeles. And I personally have been to both locations this season. And with Booking.com, you get hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts. Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season, including bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. All right, here we go. We are going to get into the fact that some of these picks for the Giants in recent years have panned out. And it took a while. And that's the thing we've said every year at draft time, is that you can't judge a player upon them being drafted. And oftentimes you can't judge them even along the way through their minor league career. I mean, you can, but you can't necessarily predict what they're going to do. Like, did anybody really see this coming from Patrick Bailey, where he's quickly established himself as one of the better catchers in baseball? Like, not just a defensive catcher who can't hit, not a guy who can't hit left-handed pitching, even though a lot of people said he couldn't. I mean, he has. And he's just a good player, and he's young. And anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be talking about the All-Star game. Hopefully, Elliot Ramos hits a couple homers and Logan Webb strikes out the side against like Judge and Soto and Gunnar Henderson or something like that. I don't know. Webb is probably going to pitch, and so that lineup, the American League lineup, is really tough, and so it'll be very compelling to see potentially Logan Webb face a lot of those guys, not necessarily the starters, because obviously guys get removed. Anyway, that's coming up tomorrow. We've also got some mailbag questions left over, and as the week goes on, we'll kind of recap the first half and get you set for the second half. So just thinking about some recent drafts for the Giants, I mean, there was so much blowback when they took Patrick Bailey. I think a lot of people wanted them to take Tyler Soderstrom, which kind of also doesn't make sense because the fan reaction was also, why did the Giants take a catcher with their first round selection there when they already had Joey Bart? And the irony is, like, now, of course, it makes all the sense in the world. And that's the thing, is you just kind of always draft what you believe is the best player available. Sometimes, yes, you do like an underslot, and Bailey was an underslot type pick where he wasn't projected to go quite that high. And so they paid him less money so that they could spend more money later when they signed Kyle Harrison. They drafted and then eventually signed Kyle Harrison, lured him away from a commitment to UCLA. And so that 2020 draft alone, with Patrick Bailey and Kyle Harrison and, others as well, and recently Hayden Birdsong, he was the 2022 draft pick, I think. And yeah, 2022 sixth rounder, and he's already at the major league level. So that is a really fast rise. So right now you're looking at a lot of homegrown players: Elliot Ramos, Patrick Bailey, Tyler Fitzgerald, Luis Matos. I'm just looking at like the active major league roster: Logan Webb, Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong, Camilo Doval, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Walker, I think Eric Miller, Randy Rodriguez. No, not Eric Miller. Randy Rodriguez, I believe, is homegrown. Sean Jelly. So there's a lot of homegrown talent on the Giants. Keaton Wynn as well. And, not all those guys were drafted by this new regime or signed. Like Randy Rodriguez was signed in 2017 as, out of the Dominican Republic. Keaton Wynn was drafted in 2018. Doval was signed in 2015. And Tyler Rogers was drafted in 2013. Ryan Walker was drafted in 2018. So that's all pre-current regime. But when we look at, Tyler Fitzgerald was a current regime draft pick. Hayden Birdsong, current regime draft pick. And Patrick Bailey and Kyle Harrison, and not to mention just guys in the minors like Bryce Eldridge, their first round pick last year, has been very impressive. And I believe he's all the way in AAA already, right? I shouldn't be asking you. He's only 19 years old. No, I'm totally tripping. He's in high A. Who am I thinking of who's in AAA? Not Bryce Eldridge. He's in high A and crushing it. I mean, he's hitting .325 with a .453 on base and .475 slugging. So that's not a ton of power, but it's a walk rate of 17%. Strikeout rate is manageable at 24.5%. He's just 19 years old, turns 20 in October. And so, he went 16th overall to the Giants last year. And Reggie Crawford, I think I'm thinking of Reggie Crawford. He went all the way to AAA pretty fast as he just is focusing on pitching. And they got him 30th overall. So 2022. So the year after they were the best team in baseball. And he was in AAA, but he hasn't pitched since June 5th. And so I actually have no idea what's going on with Reggie Crawford. But the fact that he is all the way in AAA already and putting up impressive numbers, needs to tone down the walks for sure. But anyway, there's just a lot to like about the Giants system, and I'm just barely scratching the surface with a lot of these guys. I mean, Carson Whisenhunt, Joe Whitman. I mean, they've just made a lot of picks that are intriguing coming up through the pipeline, and then guys have showed up at the major league level and produced, not like all of them and not in huge numbers, but a Patrick Bailey here, a Kyle Harrison there. It doesn't take many guys to turn over a team when you get some young, really good talent. And so we're finally starting to see that, and that's a good thing. So anyway, that was just on top of mind with the draft taking place right now. And that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow breaking down the All-Star game, and then, depending on how interesting the All-Star game is, we'll get into your mailbag questions from last week as well. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Also a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the Giants draft so far. Anyway, thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked on Giants.